You do not win by struggling to the top of a caste system. You win by refusing to be trapped within one at all. Naomi Wolf.
Bending Not Breaking, Season 4, Episode 2, A Leaf in the Wind. And welcome back to another episode of Bending Not Breaking. I'm Sunshine.
And this is Ben, and I'm curious about why we are starting this with it's book 1 of Korra, and we're calling it season 4. I don't get it. Help me understand.
You're going to bring this up on the second episode of the season?
I didn't notice the first time.
This isn't a conversation we're going to have on the first episode?
I didn't notice.
It's the 4th season of Bending Not Breaking. We are talking about book 1 of Korra.
It's just a little confusing.
Well, now we're clarifying.
Okay. Well, now we know.
But thanks for lifting up the question. Appreciate you doing that.
You know.
Always challenge us to be better and make sure we're doing things with transparency.
Really, I was just confused.
Transparency is not our lens today.
It's not. It's not.
It's defiance.
Defiance. I was defiant of your reading of the... You picked the wrong season.
What?
It's book 1.
And we got Max here
Seasons
twisting
in
those
books,
dials
right?
as always. Let's bring Max on in to get his input on this season debacle.
How are you, Max?
Good to see you.
I am doing well, and it's good to be seen.
Oh, it
Have
is
you?
good to be seen.
All right, so this is a new show, right? So this isn't Avatar anymore. We're on Korra. Are you going to watch an episode of Legend of Korra at all?
I doubt it.
What would it take?
But
Like,
maybe.
what would it take for you to watch A Legend of Korra? Or Avatar: The Last Airbender?
Tell them we're watching Over the Hedge, but then
It wouldn't take much.
Put on Legend of Korra instead.
I mean, if you were like, hey, I'm baking you a nice bread. Do you want to come over for 25 minutes and watch an episode of this while I feed you bread? Like, I'd probably say yes.
Like Fakasha.
Is it worth it?
Let
What do
me
you
work it. Put that thing down, flip it in reverse.
I'm more of a-
Patrons.
It's yo from winning the buñeta, which is just put that thing down, flip it, and reverse it. In reverse.
I'm
Do you
more
know
of
that?
a
If
I'm
we
more
get-
of a ciabatta boy,
If we get
which is a Hugh Grant vehicle.
3 more patrons over the next couple of weeks, let's say 2 weeks, I will bake ciabatta
I'm in.
for Max.
Put a little pesto
and we'll
chicken
watch
on it.
episode 1.
And then an episode, and then let's watch
About a Boy with Hugh Grant.
And then
But
watch
it'll,
About a
and
Boy.
I'll make an Instagram.
Or do
caption.
we watch About a Boy with the you know
The
the
show.
series? The series.
They did the show that was
They did
based
a-
off
They
the
had
book.
one season at
It
least.
was good.
I liked it.
It was with
that guy,
with
Doctor
Doctor
Dick,
yeah, Doctor
Huh?
from Fired Up. He was also on
Doctor. Wasn't he Doctor?
He was
Sam
also a
in
doctor
New Girl?
on New Girl. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Cello.
No, that's School of Rock.
Carly Fries.
No, that was About a Boy, episode 1 with the woman who had a cello.
I haven't seen the
We're talking
TV
about
show.
a different show. We're talking about Legend of Korra now. Is what we need to get back to.
Sorry, I digress. Today we're talking about Defiance.
You make me a ciabatta and I digest.
Defiance. What is defiance?
I was about to ask you what Defiance means.
Open resistance. Bold disobedience. Both words describing Max's digestive system.
I digest quite well. I was more pointing to myself because that's typically my.
A lot of fiber.
Well, I tend to be defiant of y'all trying to have a conversation about real things
That's fair.
to insert puns instead.
Yeah, that is true. You are ridiculous in every way.
In the best of ways.
Oh, sure.
Defiance.
Defiance.
The Daniel Craig movie. Different movie.
Is that a movie?
I almost did that joke earlier too.
Never seen it.
I never watched it either. People liked it.
Can't
But-
be that good.
Was it good, Max?
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Wait, didn't
I
you say
just-
you just watched it?
No, I said I almost made that joke earlier too.
Oh, well, you had to have knowledge of it, so I just assume you watched it.
It's a 2008 movie.
Anyway, Defiance.
It's got a 7.2 on IMDb. That means people like it enough.
Sure.
Defiance.
Yeah.
Let's get to Korra.
Yeah, so we got to do an episode recap, and you know what that means. Sunshine is going to be doing the episode recap.
It's my first one of the season.
You should have done one last episode.
No, I do the evens, you do the odds.
You keep
Every
saying
season.
that, but I just don't think I don't think we need to live by that rule. I think that we need to be more fluid like water, and you just do them more often.
No.
So you're going to have 30 seconds on the clock. 30 seconds on the clock. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you sure you're ready?
Yeah, is this your banter to pull up your stopwatch?
On your mark,
Yeah.
get set, go.
Korra wants to go check out pro bending, and Tenzin says no, and then she struggles with airbending. And being the leaf, she also struggles with her meditation. Korra then
That was wasted
sneaks
space.
off to a pro bending match, and she meets Toza, who then meets Bolin, and she gets to go to the locker room. Mako does not like this, but then she sees it, she fights in a pro bending match, and they win. And Tenzin realizes that she learned something in the process, and so did he.
Stop. You missed some things.
Yeah. But I was trying to do my best announcer recap voice like they do on the show.
Yeah, you had some pretty significant pauses in there. Normally, you're just like
You
speed
gotta
going
t-
through
it's,
these
it's tough to
things.
keep up the
Announcer voice.
announcer
mixed
voice.
with
It's the weird
yeah.
transatlantic radio voice.
Interesting. All right, well, that's your recap, folks. If you don't remember what else happens, that's on you. You should go watch the episode.
She struggled with airbending, and then she pro bending,
Pro bending.
and then she was the leaf.
And then she does airbending tactics without airbending.
Oh, what? Let's just jump right into that
We're
moment.
talking about defiance.
Okay, fine. We won't talk about that moment. No, I can spin this. Give me a second.
All right, let's spin it. Here we go. I'm ready.
We are sometimes so defiant about going against the ways that we've been taught or the ways that we think are the correct ways to teach. And I think we do this with people. We do this with kids. We do this is the way, right? Mandalorian, this is the way. And it leaves room for flexibility in how we learn and how we grow. And the way that Tenzin is able to realize that pro bending is becoming a teacher for Korra in a way that he couldn't be, in a way that might work better for her learning style, in a way that engages her better, and his ability to kind of pivot because of that is a really cool moment. And as opposed to being defiant in this is the style that I'm going to teach you in because I think it's the way that you need to learn. And I think we do that. I think we do that with people. I think we say this is the only way. This is how you need to learn this skill. This is how I'm going to parent. This is how I'm going to treat you because I think it's the right way, rather than adapting to the situation or the person that we're teaching.
So you're talking about Tenzin's defiance here, not Korra's.
Correct.
Interesting.
Yeah. His defiance in not shifting from, because he's got this idea around what airbending is supposed to be, and that this is the way that it has to be taught and the way that it's learned, and it, as anything, whether it's traditions or processes, they have to be able to shift and navigate to breathe life into what the original intent is. And if it's for Korra to learn this skill in a way that makes her successful at it, it can't necessarily be you have to meditate, you have to do this, you have to go through the relic. We have to be able to shift and teach people the way that they're going to learn best.
Well, it goes and talks about again, going back to this concept, we've talked about it before, of tradition, right? This is the traditional way that we teach and the way that people learn airbending. Look at my 3 kids. They learned this way, right? It's when you are grown and
Actually,
born.
I think Milo's just sleeping.
Yeah, but when you're but he's an airbender,
Right.
and he is clearly adept at airbending, right? And so
The leaf.
But it's one of those things where when you are indoctrinated into a culture, it is much easier to live into those cultural values versus Korra, who was born opposite, has never been able to airbend really, and is literally just an alien to this culture. And it's interesting that we see her struggle with this all episode and frankly all season, right? We see her really struggle with these concepts. And I think that she makes a really good point at one point during the episode where she says, Tenzin talks about, air is the element of freedom. And then she's like, well, I'm not very free. I'm very restricted. I'm on this island. I can't leave. I'm not allowed to go do the things that I want to do. And it's interesting to think about that, how that works.
Well, and Tenzin's defiant back, right? Like, no, this is the way that we're going to do this.
It's like
right?
this dichotomy of wills that are battling against one another. And so this, like, when you come into contact with something that goes against your way of doing things, defiance is the result.
Well, and it's tough, right? If we're in a position of you do voice lessons, so I'm going to use that as an example.
Sure, I sure do.
If there's a teacher of voice that we struggle with, that we don't enjoy, there's another voice teacher out there we likely can go learn from.
And it's the same thing with a therapist. A lot of people like try to accommodate their therapist and think that like, oh, it must be me. No. Therapists are human.
Right?
Right?
That
just
might
like
not be the therapist
just
for
like
you.
your voice teacher. Your voice teacher might just not have the personality or the technique that is for you. It doesn't mean you're a bad singer. It doesn't mean that
they're a bad teacher.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean that you're not worthy if it's your therapist. It doesn't mean that you are able and should even, I'm willing to say, find someone that is able to speak to you.
Right.
Right? And so be defiant. Stick in that, and like have confidence in the fact that you are worthy of belonging, you are worthy of love, and therefore deserving of a teacher that is able to teach you.
And that brings up such a point to me that I struggle with, like, in the way that I was educated. Not necessarily me, but maybe like the educational system as a whole is sometimes you have to advocate for yourself in those ways,
And
right?
that's
like
so hard. I suck at this. I'm going to be real.
And how do you do that when everything you're taught is that you have to listen to the teacher because they're the teacher?
Yes.
And I think back to teachers that I had that were destructive or caused trauma.
Yes.
But I was a fifth grader, and so I didn't know how to stand up for myself in those moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm supposed to always listen to the adult. It's the same way that we teach agency around kids' ability to be like, I don't want to hug.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to hug right now.
But it's the
Don't
caring
hug
thing
me.
to do.
No, but that's your uncle. You have to hug them. That's your
Yeah.
grandparent. You have to hug them.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
you're taking away body autonomy at that point, right? So what are these moments, and how do we learn when we can stick up for ourselves, and where's the line? And when is the line when sometimes we need to say, no, I need to not push back because I need to learn, right? I need to learn a different way.
Well, it's hard because there are
because there are things Korra needs to learn from
I
Tenzin
think there's
that
a
he's
difference,
probably right about.
And I think there's a difference between feeling discomfort versus other things, right?
Yes,
if like teaching and learning and growing is inherently uncomfortable, but it's one of those things where, like, how do you discern when that discomfort is growing pains, or as Andrew said last episode, is this the darkness of the womb or the darkness of the tomb, right? That's something he said last episode that really has stuck with me, right? But like, is this struggle that I'm in something that's being born into something new, or is it something that is not good, right?
Well, because we've been a part of and have taught different classes and around creating safe spaces or
quote safe spaces,
and racial equity trainings that are meant to be uncomfortable. Trainings that are meant to be, hey, we're going to push back on notions that you have.
Yeah.
And we expect you to get uncomfortable because you are unlearning things that you thought you knew or that you were an expert in. Or we're going to push back on ideas that maybe challenge your thought process. Versus we are going to make you emotionally unsafe.
Yeah,
or we are going to, make you physically unsafe, and there's a difference between those two things.
Well, yeah, and I think that's what it hinges on. There's an article that I read recently on the difference between safe spaces and brave spaces. And whenever we're like forming meetings and we're in our jobs or whatever it is, a lot of times people say, this is a safe space.
But if you don't have the actions to actually back that up,
but
then that's not a thing.
Then, so what we have to do is, instead of claiming that this is going to be a safe space, especially when it comes to like social justice trainings and racial equity trainings and gender diversity and all of the different things that are related to social justice, right? I especially with these topics, saying that this is a safe space it's not okay, because what it does is it is creating it's a misnomer.
It's saying that the space is already safe rather than one that strives to be safe.
Correct. And so what we have to do is say that this is something we're calling people to be brave within this space. When you are feeling uncomfortable and when you are feeling unsafe, we are calling on courage for you to speak up and say, "Hey, this is affecting me a certain way." And that's a very vulnerable thing to do. It is inherently, vulnerability means that we are less safe. It sometimes leads to really positive gains, but being vulnerable also means that we can get hurt really badly, right? It's both. And how do we cultivate this concept of bravery while not claiming safety? That's something I think corporations and businesses and any group needs to focus on.
It's so tough because I think about when we set meetings, we set norms, right? And I think when you first...
Some people, some groups do.
Some places. If you set norms at the very beginning of your first meeting ever, and it's set with really good intention, and it's set with really... This is a no judgment zone. But even when you truly are saying things around like, we want people to be vulnerable, we want people to leave stuff in the meeting, and you set it with the best intentions at the beginning of that first meeting, by meeting 10 it becomes yep, these are our norms, right? And we don't do
if you even choose to revisit them,
in which case you lose that safe space net, right?
Yeah.
Because who's to say, no, if I share this, it might not be safe because of the way that someone reacts to it. Like, you have no way to claim that a space is safe. All you can do is to strive for it to be.
Well, and to relate this back to the episode, it's the same thing with Tenzin's teaching. You can claim all these things that you're saying, but if someone's not experiencing that, then that's not what's happening,
right?
Right? And so you can do the things that you have always done, but if it's not creating the same response in your student, you need to adapt.
Well, let's look at that like forcing someone to meditate when they are not in a space to be able to meditate.
No.
Right? Like, and it might be, hey, when you feel called to do it, you need, meditating is something that can be very beneficial to airbending. But sitting someone who is saying, I'm not in a space where I'm ready to meditate, and saying, like, no, you have to.
Yeah, well, okay.
Can be counterproductive.
Can I push back on that just a little?
Sure.
I think that it is very easy for someone like Korra especially to say,
I'm not in a space.
I'm not in a space ever.
Right.
and to never carve out intentional time to practice.
Right.
And so if you just write off the practice without ever giving it its like potential, like giving it a chance, then that's also not okay. So like, how do we make space for the yes and? Yes, I agree with you. And I think in order to give things a chance, we have to sometimes be not in the space to try it, but try it anyway. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure.
Because it's for me, like meditation is something that I have been off and on about for about like my entire life, really. My mom has been meditating before I was born, and constantly saying, you should try. And I'm never like, no, thank you, I don't feel like it. But like, if I never give it the chance, it will never work.
Be a thing that you'd like to do, right?
And so I have to carve out intentional time to practice. The problem is that practice is uncomfortable. That practice isn't going to be perfect. And so that's the issue, is oftentimes, especially with Korra was bending all three elements when she was 3, like when she was a toddler, right? We see her like, I'm the avatar and you got to deal with it, right? And here we go.
Moment.
It's so good. Like cute baby Korra is thebomb.com. It's probably one of my favorite. I love that scene. But like, she's been able to bend all the elements except for air since then. And so she's just accomplished. She's been able to excel in many portions of her life. And this is something that she's struggling with. And so when we encounter things like that, it's really easy for us to also be like, oh, if I don't get it right away, then it's not something that's for me. And I think that sometimes we have to have this element of grit, if you will, to commit to something even though we're not good at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's defiant of ourselves in order to make that happen. Like, I have to be defiant of the fact that, like, no, I'm going to try this. Even though I don't want to, I'm going to defy my instinct.
It's almost like the way that I like have to make myself like physically work out and do stuff, like that motivation.
In a way,
'Cause
yeah.
if the option is, would you rather dive into this book or movie or television show
Yep.
or work out, the answer is always, I would rather watch the movie that I haven't seen yet, right?
Yeah.
And so carving out time, I specifically remember Sarah, my partner, was like, hey, would you like to do yoga with me? And I was like, I would love to work out with you. And she's like, let's do it now. And I was like, I don't want to do it now. And she was like, do you want to do it today? And I was like, no. And she was like, well, and I was like, we can do it today. like it was, and it's because like I really loved doing those things with her. If for whatever reason that day I was like, no, I don't want to. But I will. And it was carving out that intentional time. And it was a really pleasant way to spend the afternoon with her, right? So like,
Yeah.
definitely feel those moments in life, and
Yep.
they're there.
Well, and I just think it's hard because I think that there are moments when defiance is integral to our success, and I think there are moments when defiance is a form of stubbornness that isn't necessarily a good thing. And it's hard to, like, how do we, again, it's this discernment process of realizing when is it good to defy versus when is it not
And
good.
there's not a perfect cut.
There's
dry
no hard
answer
and
to
fast.
that.
Yeah.
Speaking of like what makes us defiant, like what are the things? And so I think about a lot of times we defy what we don't understand or understand the process, or if there's a lack of transparency.
Yes.
So I think back to when I was a child where my parents were like, you need to clean your room. And I was
You
always
sure
just like,
do.
which is like,
But I'm going to make it dirty. And
well,
it's
it's fair, like, to keep our room tidy. Like, that is a fair request. But as a child, I was like, why? And I always hated, well, like, what if someone comes over? And
Why would I make my bed?
I was like,
I'm
who are
just
you
gonna get in
inviting
it.
over? Like, who's showing up to our house, like, unannounced to come check out my bedroom? Was always my response as a kid.
Well, it's also like, make your bed, but like, why?
But there would have been a different level if there was transparency around, like, you need to make sure we're respecting the things that we have, and we need to make sure that we're putting things where they belong and that you're ready for the day. Like, if there was a more transparent answer than because I said so, right? Which is
the worst.
Working with kids so much, hearing a counselor ever say like, "Oh, get in line because I said so," is like, it goes back to like,
no.
no. It goes. That's the same ideals of like because
And at
I'm
the
in it
same
because I'm
time-
the adult, right?
Yes.
But there's a difference between saying like, because if we get in line, it shows that we're ready to go, and then we can move on to the next activity, and then that means we get to play that activity faster. And then if someone was like, well, why? I was like, I already told you, please get in line, right? Like that. There's a difference between that and because I'm the adult and you have to listen to me.
And it's one of those things where like, yes, I 1000% agree with this. We need to be doing way more of it than we are. And I so understand that response.
Correct. Especially when it's not the child's fault. Like all these things have lined up across your day.
There are 30 kids that asked you the same question.
Right.
And some of them asked you more than once.
But as a parent, right? All of these things load up on you over the course of the day, and all you need is for your child to put on their pajamas.
Literally put on your shoes.
Just need to wear your pajamas.
Yeah.
Why? Because we wear clothes to bed.
Yeah.
Like, just put them on. So.
Well, some people wear clothes to bed.
Yeah. Well. Anyways. So, but yeah, I understand those. Max, you got thoughts on that?
I may not be among the some people who wear clothes to bed.
Shirts are constricting when you're
I don't wear
sleeping.
shirts to bed.
No. Okay, especially long sleeves.
I may or may not wear other things. Anyway,
This is getting saucy.
B&B after dark.
Intimate. Okay, defiance. Okay, so I think one of the things you're talking about is like what's leading to the defiance, right? Is for me one of the things that leads to defiance is one, yes, this lack of clarity, but also when we are frustrated, when we are experiencing anything that's like outside in the halt factor, if you will, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, whenever we're experiencing any of those things, it's also going to lead to a quicker defiant response, particularly on the probably the stubborn, not good side, right? And we see that happen. We see it happen because Korra gets more and more defiant over the course of this episode because she's frustrated, because she's not successful, right? So she starts out like saying, okay, I'm going to try to be the leaf. And then she gets whacked by these boards and then it doesn't work. And then she feels defeated. And then, right, Milo, this 4-year-old, 5-year-old, however old he is like, be the leaf. And like, like in a way, like not trying to, but like, feels like it could be a taunt almost. So there's like, and then it gets to this point where like, now I can't be free, even though you're saying be free. So there's this element of credibility for Tenzin of like, you're saying this, but you're not letting me do it. And then eventually she just sneaks out. And this act of defiance of her sneaking out to the bending gym, pro bending arena that's a major act. She's sneaking away deliberately because at first there's this like loophole that she found where like, well, I could listen to the radio, but Tenzin's like, no, you know what I meant. And it's like there's this element of like the spirit of the law versus like the way it is literally written that children are so keen on capitalizing on.
Oh, I did that. That was my entire childhood with my parents.
Yeah, well,
Everything.
But what that leads to is the reason kids do that.
You never told me that I couldn't stand on top of a moving car. Why am I in trouble for that? Right?
Yeah,
Like,
well, exactly. But like, it's one of those things where if people, children included, don't understand why and don't have all the information, they're gonna look for the loophole.
Well, and not even that also leads to this weird sense that someone is being defiant when they might not actually be defiant. It's a perceived defiance because we weren't clear.
Fair.
And that happens in this episode every time Korra breaks a rule while pro bending. And people see that as like, but people get mad or upset and she gets penalized over and over again. And I'm like,
she doesn't know the rules.
Never given the rules.
Yeah.
Like no one ever told her the rules of this game.
And she still came back and whooped butt.
But that's what I'm saying. So, like, it's a perceived, like, she's being defiant. She's getting penalized over and over again. How often do we do that to people? When we're not clear.
We assume.
When we assume they know the rules, or
Yeah.
we assume they know our expectations. And the reality was we were never clear with them to begin with. And so there's this perceived, you're being defiant. You're doing this on purpose. You're antagonizing me on purpose. And the reality is the rules were never laid out. And the expectations were never clear, and we were never transparent with why decisions were made, and so.
So I'm hearing from you right now that clarity of expectations is a really helpful component of ensuring that people are all on the same page, and that leads to less defiance with clarity of expectation.
Have you ever had an employee that you were working with that you were just kind of like, they're breaking the rules and they are not doing what I'm expecting them to do with, whatever, you worked with teens, right? Like you were supposed to do these things and I'm mad at you because you're not. But the reality was I was never clear with them to begin with. Maybe you were perfectly clear every time.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that also because I was working with teens, there were very clear violations.
Well, and that's a different situation, right? That's a very different situation.
But yes, also there were times when I had to be like, tell me, like, help me understand why you made that decision.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about it from that way. But like, there are also times when they're like doing things that they just shouldn't do because teens do things like that. But not all teens do that. It's just like when you're working with a population of 200 teens, statistically, you're likely to have people that are breaking things that they agreed to do.
No. Well, it's just, again, another way to make this point even clearer, is this understanding of, like, I need you to go organize these files. Right? Well, was that alphabetical? Is that by
Organize
date?
them
Is that by
how? Yeah.
themes? Like, how? What does that even mean?
Well, and one of the things that my friend Brene Brown says is that we have to. How do you paint that picture? Paint that a little clearer for me, right? And so you in Dare to Lead, she talks about this because oftentimes it's a clarity issue, and so paint what done looks like is a great phrase to utilize in that situation. So if you get said, "Hey, go organize those files," a response might be, "Hey, can you just paint what done looks like for me so like I know exactly what you're looking for?"
So I'm not trying to be defiant.
No, I
just
want to.
need
I want to do it.
clarity. I wanna do it well.
But like your organization and my organization might look very different. So how do we paint done?
Right. Did Hasuk need to have that, like, was he defiant? He's the one who doesn't show up. He's the water.
I don't have a very
like,
good generous like I don't have a very generous assumption of this guy. So
He could have been dealing with
I'm a
something
big real.
outside of the arena.
Oh,
like,
that's fair. Okay,
but-
that's better.
but yeah, but it's very clear he is not meeting expectations according to Mako.
Yeah.
And let's talk about those moments of I didn't perform well. You're also now coming down on me and telling me that I didn't perform well, and not necessarily in a way that's like productive.
Yeah.
And so, is that going to lead to me no longer being defiant, or am I going to double down? And the answer is, I'm a double down.
Yeah, I think how do we not put people in the corner like that, right? And
To the point
so
where he felt like he had to quit, right? Like,
Yeah.
like he's like, I'm just not showing up anymore.
well, and frankly, he did get them to this point, but at the same time, I like clearly having Korra on the team worked out. But it was one of those things where when we are holding people accountable, we need to make sure that we are following a series of steps that allows us to hold them accountable in a way that doesn't make them feel less than, like they aren't worthy, or you know what I mean. And so like there's all these steps, and again we've referenced this before, but there's this book I highly recommend called Crucial Accountability, that I almost swear by in a way. I've been teaching it now and was taught it for about probably like 3 or 4 years ago, and I will never not use it until I find something better. But essentially it's like start with heart, like assume the best, like, and then it's like gives you this full detailed outline. You can look it up. I highly recommend the book. But
Right.
it's just like, how do we hold people accountable in a way that makes them not feel like you are trashing them?
Right.
And which is
We're
what it
working
feels
on
like
the
for Mako.
behavior. We're not working on, like, it's not a personal attack.
Exactly. And I think that's what leads that's partly what leads to defiance, right? When I'm feeling hungry, angry, lonely, tired, i.e. angry, because I'm being held accountable to a standard that is either beyond because of the way that they're holding me accountable, or there's just a lot of things that fit into that conversation that can really make it difficult to not be defiant in that moment. Yeah.
And then there's the relics, right? Like, there's a little bit, and we kind of mentioned it a little bit, but this idea of going through the Airbender relic, and kind of going against the grain, forcing your will upon something when that is clearly not working.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's something that
this
Korra has to
unwillingness
learn,
to
right?
change. Yeah.
And that's something like Korra is a force, and a wonderful force, like full of awesome. Like I stand account Korra, and is a force. And sometimes it's destructive because when it doesn't go the way that she's expecting, it leads to a little bit of destruction. And we see that when she like tears down this relic, and we see Tenzin like blow a fuse. But it's one of those things where
They rebuilt it.
they did, and it's possible to rebuild, right? It's a thing, things can be replaced.
I don't know. It's tough to rebuild like a 200-year-old heirloom and like
Yeah,
put it back. Did they have
yeah.
to get new wood? Is it no longer a 200-year-old heirloom at this point?
Yeah.
It's a whole lot.
Korra is full of, like, one of the things I love about her that I struggle with is she does not play small. and I play small. And what I mean by that is Korra never backs down from a challenge.
She's not going to be told that she doesn't have a seat at the table.
Exactly. And we see that. One of the moments that really lifts that up for me is she sneaks into the pro bending arena, and the gym master person finds her, and
Toza.
she totally lies, right? And she's like, no, I'm just looking for the bathroom. And then Bolin comes in and like lies for her and says, oh, she's with me. And she immediately is like, and is like, nah, but we're like just friends. And Bolin's like, so she is willing to defy the law, but she is not willing to defy it, not on her terms.
Right.
And I think that one of the things that like I would have done in that play, like that situation, is I think I would have caved, and I would have been like, yeah, I'm totally with him, and like, you know what I mean, I would have backed down. But she is so defiant of what confines her and what doesn't serve her, and I really admire her for it.
I think we learned in several moments, like, her defiance of, she was not willing to be knocked off the back of that stage. Right?
Yeah, that's a great
point. So
point.
there are moments where this defiance, this advocating for yourself, this standing up for yourself, this not willing to move is important. And we are clearly shown examples of where it needs to happen. And so we have to learn and grow and experience life and figure out when these moments are where we need to stand firm, be grounded, or be the leaf.
Yeah.
Right? There are sometimes we need to be the earthbender, and there are sometimes we need to be the airbender.
Which is why I love this concept of this podcast. But because I'm
glad you like it.
Because we all have all four of these elements are within us, right? We all need to be the avatar. We all need to develop all four of these elements within ourselves in order to be fully human, right? In order to be fully who we can be, we need all four of these things. And that's why I love Iroh's. Like, even though he's a firebender, he is utilizing all four teachings from all four elements in his life and in his story. And we see Korra grappling with this. One of the things I love is we found there's a meme going around of, I guess it's not a meme, there's just like information going around on all the social medias of the amount of bending that Korra does and like how much she does of each element. If you were to guess, I don't know if you saw this stat, but what element does she bend the most? Do you remember? Do you have a guess? Hazard a guess?
Water.
Nope. Fire.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That seems right.
And that seems really indicative, right? Fire is bold. She is very fiery in her personality. Even though she's from the Southern Water Tribe, the way that she engages with the world feels very fire. Mm-hmm. And the fact that over the course of all 4 seasons, she bends fire the most doesn't surprise me at all. You know? And I think that's just really indicative, because even though she's the avatar, even though she's from the Southern Water Tribe, her personality is very fiery. It's very bold. It's very confident, and it's gorgeous. It's awesome. I love it. And it's very fiery, and sometimes it's dangerous. And so there's just this really beautiful thing that she's grappling with this whole season of how does she tap into this airbending. That it's fascinating, because when she sneaks away, I question, she doesn't learn airbending as soon as she sneaks away, as soon as she embraces this freedom. I wonder if Defiance in a way is just as caging as being caged, if that makes sense. Because it wasn't until she was on the edge of the pro bending arena where she made the choice to be like, now I'm going to practice this. And I wonder if there's that element of like defying because I feel like this is the only thing that I like have to do and I need to go do this, versus like, I'm going to do this because I want to do this, because this is something that I have control over. You know, I think that's just really beautiful, the fact that she was able to implement this airbending technique when she made the choice to do it, and that's what enabled that freedom, that element of air that made it work. Does that make sense? Is that
Yeah.
am I just reaching there? I might be reaching.
I feel it.
Okay.
I feel it. Anything else we want to hit on this episode? 'Cause we've tackled a lot.
I guess we have, haven't we? I think for me, the thing that I really appreciate that I don't want to make, I want to make sure we don't leave out is this idea of Tenzin, right? You mentioned this at the beginning with Tenzin and this meditation, and then Tenzin even at the end where she does this moment where she uses an airbending technique, and Tenzin's like, yeah, and then he like is super happy about it, but this defiance of like tradition. But for me, I wonder, Tenzin at the end of the episode apologizes to Korra, and I think one of the things that happens after Defiance is this moment of possible like reconciliation,
And let's lean into it.
and Tenzin does.
Yeah.
Tenzin, so many times throughout this whole series, admits when he was wrong.
Well, and I think that we lift up very frequently with Korra all these expectations that she has, and how she views herself as the Avatar, and this willingness to feel that she's enough. And Tenzin is very similar.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to, like, I have to restore the Air Nation, and I have to make my father proud, and it comes at the expense of relationships that he has with his siblings. But one thing that he is doing throughout this process, which I think proves to me, is kind of this understanding of that you're never too old to that you have to stop learning, right? Like, you're never at a point where old dogs can't learn new tricks.
Yeah.
I think Tenzin
And he
shows
models
us
that so well.
that
It's
you
so
can,
beautiful.
and I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
And he did it last episode too. Like,
No,
he just
yeah.
admits when he's wrong so frequently. And I just, in a leader, that is one of the most admirable qualities that I can think of, is when a leader is willing to say, I was wrong.
Yep.
I think that's just, I'm willing to walk off a cliff for someone who is willing to admit that they were wrong. I think it's huge. That's all I had. I think there are other things we could talk about, but, we can't talk about everything.
No, but we will take a quick break, and we'll jump back in with our devotion and our gratitude. We'll be right back.
Hey friends, family, listeners, welcome back. We're glad you're here. We are so excited to dive into our devotion for the day.
Yes.
Yeah, and so today we're talking about defiance mixed with the element of earth.
That worked out well.
Right? Yeah, I think that does work out well. Like, earth is a defiant element in a way.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what the goal here is, just as a reminder, is we are trying to set an intention, a goal for the next week in which we are trying to better ourselves. We're trying to become. And we're trying to use the avatar cycle. We're trying to use the lenses we choose to become better. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to set a goal or intention, kind of infusing and thinking about both of these things. So I'm going to invite Sunshine to go first and tell us about an intention or a goal regarding Earth and defiance.
So one of the things we talked about that we love about Korra is her willingness to not be told that she doesn't deserve a seat at the table, and that she's willing to be defiant and kind of stand her ground on those types of things.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I have had the privilege to believe that I deserve every seat at every table. And that's not true. And I think for me that I need to continue to be intentional about recognizing and listening and when I don't need to be at a table. And that I need
I love that.
I need to listen to what has happened at the table and be supportive or learn from it, but that I do not need to be at every table. And so I need to be the leaf. I need to not stay grounded and firm that I am owed a seat at every table. I'm not, right? And I need to be intentional about how I move forward in the world. And so my intention this week is to say, what are the spaces that I can and should be a part of, and what are the spaces that are not meant for me and that I need to be respectful of that.
Yeah, how do I decenter
Right.
my experience?
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Thank you for lifting that up. I think that's really, really challenging. I remember when I first took my first racial equity training, and afterwards there were groups that met based off of race, and I was like, but I want to go to the one that's, and I was like, and I had a lot to learn. So I think that really taking that is a important step. So thank you for lifting that up.
Yeah. What about you?
Okay. So for Earth and Defiance, one of the things that comes to mind for me, there's Maya Angelou wrote a poem called "And Still I Rise," and what a beautiful poem. But it's defiant. I am going to defy the whiteness of the world. I'm going to defy the expectations of the spirit of capitalism. I'm going to defy the expectations of the spirit of patriarchy, and I will rise. And the first like verse of it is, "You may write me down in history with your bitter twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise." And that's just a very Earth feeling, right? And it reminded me of that. And I want to be that. I want to be defiant of the systems of oppression that exist. And part of the way that I can do that is to question them. And so as I take these classes on ethics, as I take these classes on lament, I want to question what I'm being taught. I want to go into this week, because I'm setting a weekly goal, right? A weekly intention. I want to go into this week really with a lens of defiance and questioning the norm that is like hindering me versus the norm that is uplifting me. And how do I live into and discern those things? And I think the way that I can do that is developing awareness and asking that question. And so that's what I'm going to do this week as I engage with the world.
Question things, which doesn't mean you don't learn from them, right?
Oh,
Like that's
like in questioning,
just like,
also doesn't mean they're necessarily bad.
and
They
it doesn't
might
mean
be,
you're being defiant. It means you're seeking to understand.
yeah, but sometimes questioning things, big act of defiance, depending on who you're engaging with, right? I have some professors that are super all about questions, and then I have some professors that are like super all about like
You listen to what I said.
giving their answer despite my question. Like, and so
Like, that's not what I asked.
yeah,
like,
like
that's not.
you're avoiding the question. So I'm gonna do my best to live into that questioning this week.
Perfect. Fantastic. Well, this has been a great episode. Max, you got any thoughts you want to add?
Not at this time.
Fantastic. We're going to get that put on a shirt.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. Little Max shirt.
You should put May on the front saying "not at this time," because May would say that.
Yeah. That would be a thing May would say.
Maybe we can get Cricket.
Where's May at this point? Zuko's still alive.
Ooh, interesting question.
Where's May at this point?
I don't know. We don't see her.
Uh-oh.
We don't see really anybody else.
Y'all follow us on all the things, BNB_pod, Instagram, Twitter. If you want to follow me, I have that handle on TikTok, and I'm going through all the Star Wars canon this year, which is it's a lot. I've read a lot of books, and by read a lot of books, I mean Audible has maybe listened to a lot of books, which has been fun.
But before we're done, we can't forget our favorite segment, which is gratitude.
Oh, that's right. I almost totally forgot.
I know.
Can't do that.
Can't do that. So gratitude, y'all. We are just really grateful for these characters. And what we want to do is cultivate gratitude, because gratitude is a practice. Make sure that we engage with joy a little bit more because, those two are pretty inseparable.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to make sure that we are cultivating joy by experiencing gratitude. And so the way you might think about this section is what's a character that, whether it's related to the lens or not, that has taught you something, that has given you something that makes you feel a certain way? What's a character that gives you something that you're just really grateful for? And so I'm going to pass it to you, Sunshine. Who are you grateful for this episode?
So many. Well, really the main two. But I'm going to go with Tenzin because of exactly what we talked about, this ability.
That's a great choice.
I know. So good it should have been mine. Wait, it is! Ha Tenzin is my choice. That ability to say I was wrong. I just have such a gratitude for people who can do that on a regular basis. And I strive to be that way. And I don't like being wrong, but I so appreciate that he is able to kind of sit there and say, I messed up. I could have done this differently. I should have done this differently. I'm sorry. And I think that is, I have so much gratitude for him for doing that.
Yeah, so do I.
What about you?
I don't know what our track record is for, I think a lot of times we aim not to choose, Aang or Korra, just because we want to make sure we're targeting other characters.
Yeah, we're giving some other characters some love.
So I'm really grateful for Korra, but I'm not choosing her, even though I have a lot to say about what I'm grateful for Korra this episode. I'm gonna pick Iki.
Yeah.
So this moment in the meditation sequence where Korra is hardcore struggling, and she's like, nah, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to go get some lychee juice. Iki looks up after having meditated for the whole time and, being quiet and still, and she is a child. And she has been engaging in this practice despite her elder, who is, super not about it. And then Korra's like, I'm going to go get some lychee juice. And she's like, can I have some lychee juice? And Tenzin looks her in the eye and says, no. And it reminds me of the title of our podcast, bending, not breaking. Sometimes we have to bend a little bit and just be like, yeah, this session has been a wash. Go get some lychee juice.
Let's chalk it up for what it's been. Let's move on.
And I'm
I do that
really
with a lot of my workout sessions where I'm just 15 minutes in and I'm like, you know what? That's going to be good enough for today.
And I think good enough is good enough.
Right.
Right? And I think that's really important. And I just think that sometimes we need to let kids be kids. And I just, when she says that, it feels like it's meant to be humorous, but for me, it's more than that. It's like, oh, that is so real. And that is so important that sometimes we just need to release our expectations and quit being defiantly on target, right? When things like COVID-19 happen, we need to release some of our expectations. When things that are unexpected occur, we need to let go of some of our expectations. And
I still struggle with am I being productive enough, right?
Yes.
Am I doing enough that I'm supposed to be doing for work? And the reality is I'm inside of a pandemic.
Yes.
That is, and I need to give grace to myself to say you don't have to be on for 8 hours today.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just so grateful that Iki asked that question, because that is the question that I would have asked in that moment. Is I'm not paying attention. I'm done. Can I have some lychee juice? And so I'm just really grateful for Iki.
Perfect way to wrap the show.
Right? Isn't that just beautiful?
Now go follow us on all of the things.
But seriously, go follow us.
Patreon
and then also
is there for
Patreon,
bonus content. Yeah.
Patreon, right? There's a Facebook group. You can help us pick lenses, right? You can help us do live Facebook.
So those $5 get you all the stuff.
You can also give us more than that.
Why not?
But whatever you can give is fine.
And if you want to support us in a different way, just rating and reviewing us on iTunes is a huge way for support.
Help.
So please jump on and do that.
We'll
if
read
you'd like
them
to.
on the podcast.
For sure.
Yeah, for new ones.
Absolutely. Y'all, it's been a pleasure. Max, thank you for being here and helping us sound so great.
You got it.
I'm Sunshine Mayfield.
This has been.
And this has been Bending Not Breaking. Thank you for listening.
Goodbye.